It's Wellness Wednesdays. This Wellness Wednesday. Okay, this is going to be difficult to keep this in sort of a mental health, personal well being frame as opposed to like politics hot takes territory. And the reasons are the examples of this are pretty politically charged because as you see, it's like confusing bigotry with kindness. And there's been a lot of that going around right now. We're having, threats on the transgender community. There are clawbacks to support for Pride celebrations. It's Men's Mental Health Month. And crickets, because everybody's caught between and the idea that Pride Month and Men's Mental Health Month are like two sides of a coin. Gay men are men, right? It's this weird thing where they picked Men's Mental Health Month for June because Father's Day's in June in North America. That makes sense to me. Okay, we can do both. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. And then, the Holocaust Museum in Ottawa was vandalized. Someone wrote "Feed Me" on it in red paint because so much for criticism of Israel not being about Jews, right? But people don't start here. They don't. And, kids being edgelords and not having the empathy to realize what that does to people is that's not vandalizing a Holocaust museum. That is a hateful act that someone is rapping in the language of activism, similar to that guy who set grandmothers on fire in Colorado and yelled "Free Palestine." No, there was something going on there. There was so much disordered thinking there. The fact, I'll wait for my daughter to graduate high school. I'm a great dad before I set grannies on fire. Like, that's messed up. And we live in an age where it is just too easy for people to go, oh no, I don't hate this group. I am for this other thing. I'm a good person. It's one thing to go "Free Palestine." We can get some consensus on this, but setting old ladies on fire and older men, but because they were reminding people that there are still hostages there again. That is not a zero-sum thing. You can care about the people, the civilians in Gaza, and that's a difficult term because, according to some designations of what constitutes a civilian, no one is a civilian in Gaza. And that's what makes it messy. That's why they talk about women and children instead of civilians. And I have an issue with that because if someone is a male civilian, the idea that they matter less, then you get over into Ukraine where these are conscripts. These are people fighting for literally the against Russia decided to invade, right? Like, they're fighting for their cultural and literal survival. Do you separate a civilian and a soldier there? More and more of these distinctions, I think, just they're designed to make us only care about certain people and not other people. And that's when you get to, there's 200 million, give or take, people in Gaza. There's 24 million people risking starvation, extreme hunger in Sudan right now. There's 17 million facing hunger. This is according to the UN World Food Program in Yemen. And the first thing I've seen about Yemen in a really long time was NBC News reporting on Israel bombing a dock because of the Houthis. And they're like, where food aid is... So you had to blame Israel for Yemen too? The port is the the smallest part of this problem. And I mean, these problems are really entrenched, but this idea that one group of people matters acutely and others suffering just as much are not on a lot of people's radar. That just sits wrong to me. And of course, the minute you try to talk about it, you go, why do you love dead babies? Why do you hate no, it's not that. It's that our imaginations have gotten very, very small here. And our awareness of the world is limited. And I'm not saying people are able to know about everything going on in the world. I've left out the constant tensions between Ethiopia and Eritrea, Somalia and Somaliland. There's things going on in a lot of places. But that's the point. When you focus on one and it becomes so existentially important that people are shooting embassy workers and setting old people on fire and defacing museums, cultural installations. That is no longer about the people you're trying to help. Those are about taking pot shots at the people you hate. And more personally, like I said, this is about the mental health and personal well-being element, not the global thing. And I haven't done the help support this channel. Let's do the help support this channel before I get into the personal part. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. So more personally, there's this guy I talked to. He's a Christian conservative, like that kind of Christian conservative in the US. And I've known for some time that he thinks I'm going to hell because I'm Jewish. And he insists that this isn't hateful because he just thinks that only Christians go to heaven. Why dogma? And all right, this is what he believes. He's wrong. If anybody's interested, because every religion thinks that way. No, Judaism doesn't. It doesn't. That we have something called the Noahide laws, that if you're not Jewish and you follow these laws, congratulations. You go to whatever afterlife there is. We don't have a hell. Actually, we have limbo and we have heaven. So everybody gets there eventually. Some people might just take a little longer. Then it gets weird because you have to have a body, which is why, the Orthodox don't believe in organ donation. I have signed my organ donor card. There's a lot of things that I care very deeply about the religion and the metaphysics and the ethics and the struggle with the stories. I don't agree with doctrine. And you don't have to. You can disagree with stuff. That's the great part of Judaism. So when someone just goes, well, I think you're going to hell, but I don't hate you because dogma, I don't buy that. And I've told him again and again and again, this is a hateful attitude. that you have. It's not actually in the Bible. It is a particularly narrow interpretation of the only way to God is through me that Jesus said at a time where Christianity was not an organized religion. They were all Reformed Jews, right? Well, Jesus was a Reformed Jew. They were all Jewish. And it wasn't even a form of Judaism that we recognize today because Ashkenazi Jews didn't exist yet. And where did this all happen? The Holy Land, right? Where's the Holy Land? Yeah, Bethlehem and Jerusalem and all those places like that. Yeah. But, some people believe, nope, Jews are white people. And okay, I'm a bad example. Collection of recessive genes. I joke all the time that I just really can't protest anything about myself. There just aren't enough of us. But I know, just to be clear, that I believe, I know, not all Christians believe Jews are going to hell. More to the point, I think the majority of Christians do not believe that, which is why I don't give this guy a pass of, oh, I'm Christian. But the other day, he sent me a tweet that was attacking progressives' humanism and invoked Auschwitz. And I'm like, that's it. Because there is a direct line from Jews are going to hell because they're Jews and the dehumanizing narratives that make it okay for something like that to happen. Now, there are many steps, to be clear. But it's pretty cut and dried that historically, the reasons, like, why do people always go after the Jews? Well, because, every other Abrahamic faith is like, you're going to hell and we're not. And we're like, no, everybody's got a shot. We're sort of at a disadvantage. And then it's the numbers games, right? And we're notoriously difficult to convert, Jews for Jesus aside. I never said impossible, but there's been a lot of writing from, Christians saying, no, we don't believe all Jews are going to hell for being Jewish. But to send someone an Auschwitz reference and then claim that's not hateful. He claimed it was childish and it was petty, and he was trying to annoy me into seeing basically the progressives can be wrong sometimes. Like, that's fucked up. We're not even going to get into the hypocrisy of this stuff because I'm pretty sure Jesus had something to say about ideas like that. But this guy cannot see that he's got a problem. He's got a serious problem. And when I called bullshit on him, he blew up at me and went on this big long rant about progressives. Like, he clearly has an issue with progressives. And I said to him, like, look, this is not the first time you've blown up on me. And I think this rage is actually who you are. The niceties that cover it up, that's face, right? This rage, this feels real. And that's true of some people on the right. That's true of some people on the left. That's true of some people who identify as centrists. Now, I know there are some very moral people who identify as right-wing. It's tough for them right now. I know a lot of Jewish people who are identifying as conservative voters just because they think they're safer with the people who need us to retake Jerusalem in its entirety so the end times can come and we can all suffer forever while they ascend to heaven than the left, who just, thinks the idea of a place where Jewish people have a homeland and we can be safe from pogroms and, the history of genocides against Jews. That idea, that's what Zionism means. Apparently, that's inherently genocidal. And I don't know how a group of people who rightly said, don't go after all Chinese people for COVID, don't go after all Muslims for 9/11, are now going after all Israelis for the actions of a government that has a razor thin, razor thin grip on power. And the minute the war ends, Netanyahu's out, right? Like the whole, not just the country, the idea of the country, the idea that created the country, that's genocide. That's not hateful. That's hateful. It is. It is. I'm sorry. You may think you're right. It's hateful. If someone said, the idea of America, not the flawed reality of the modern country and its current leadership, but the idea of America was something bad. America, the idea of America, the ideals, including a more perfect union, that idea is genocidal. A lot of Americans would think you'd hate them, right? You might. And if you own it, that's great. But you don't get to insist, oh no, I'm just supporting Native Americans by saying Americanism is genocide. It don't work that way. It doesn't. And I can already feel people getting upset with me because I decided to say the Z word. That's the American. We say Zed. But it really is, we live in an age where people think this kind of invective is supporting anybody. It's not. The truth is, and this is the hard truth, that until both sides of the Gaza war have enough motivation to make peace, there'll be no peace. And right now, Hamas has zero reason to make peace. They're getting what they want. They're getting anger. They're getting outrage. The world is turning against Israel. There's no reason to stop. And that doesn't mean you have to love Netanyahu. God knows I don't. That's just fact. That's how the Israel-Palestine thing has always played out, And it's not the only one in the world. Most people, again, don't know about the deep anger and hurt and hatred with, India and Pakistan. For instance, they chant death to India in Pakistan the way they chant death to America, death to the Jews in other parts of the world. We're in a reinforcing spiral of hate. And if you're playing in those pools, you're creating more hate. And I'm not saying that Jewish people in North America are immune to this. Quite the opposite. Like I said, the conservatives are good. It's like, no, they're not, man. They're not your friends. Just because they got a couple tokens there that go, hey, you can find Jewish progressives too. That doesn't mean anything. People are not simple. People are more than one thing. The doublethink involved in this. And I finally said to this guy, look, even if you don't see your anti-Semitism that you thought, oh, let's send an Auschwitz reference to somebody who already knows you think they're going to hell. Nothing anti-Semitic about that. And he covers it up with, well, I'm not sure I'm not going to hell. I'm not guaranteed into heaven. That is bullshit. because people who are worried about their own soul, really, they tend to focus on their business and what they're doing. And this guy is not one to talk. Is part of this kicked off because he wrote me to say, thank you for defending Dragon Age Veilguard. And it's like, don't you fucking dare. That is a progressive game. And you know what he said? Well, that's not relevant to real life. It's like, you son of having it both ways. Jesus said something about hypocrites. And I'm really thinking of cutting off contact because I'm starting to hate this guy. Not just feel bad for him, not be just deeply worried about him, not find him a curiosity, but hate is starting to grow in my heart, and I don't do hate. It's not that I don't feel it, but when I feel it, I start going, I gotta make some changes. This isn't good for me. Hate long-term is not good for you. It eats you from the inside. It makes you stupid. And, I said to him, okay, maybe you don't see your issues with Jews as a problem, but you openly hate progressives. So there's a part of me that you hate. I don't see why we're still talking. Because if you're at the point where you're just sending deliberately inflammatory shit, and he sent it the day after that thing in Colorado happened. That's a point where you should go, okay, I gotta check myself. But nope, dogma. Dogma is all. And you can find people in every subgroup that believe that as long as their behavior is in service to the correct dogma, any behavior they do is fine. And it's not. You cannot achieve kindness through hate. You can't. You have to make a commitment to yourself that is not what's going to motivate you. You do what I'm doing right now and going, you know what? I tried to keep a social circle that challenged some assumptions I make out of the world. But this is over the fucking line. This is dehumanizing at this point. And people make mistakes. But when you can't see how this is a problem, ironically, you need Jesus. Right? But there's so much of this out there. There's people who think the solution to the really difficult balance that we have to strike to get, trans youth rights enshrined in law. This is not simple, because any legislation we put in it's children, right? It's youth, it's teenagers. So, well, a teenager after the age of 12, you can say, okay, more and more, a teen knows elements of who and what they are, even if they're not a teenage majority. I can't legally start frying their brain with alcohol, cigarettes, and military service yet. They know something about who they are. And we should listen to all teens. And we should believe all teenagers when they say, this is me, this is what I believe in. And still protect them from impulsive and reckless behavior, because teenagers too, right? And there are ways of doing it. There are. Sorry, I think the wildfire smoke is getting to me again. It's a bit hazy out there again. But threading that needle is possible. But we're not going to do it by screaming at each other. On the one And we are not talking about 9-year-olds here. There's no reason 9-year-olds can't play co-ed sports. There's no reason why, a trans girl can't play on a girls' soccer team. There is no physical advantage when kids are 9. Puberty hasn't started yet. Right? But then there is, gender segregation kicks like a mule. We know in the 7th grade there's a lot of problems with how we segregate, we seem different based on gender. And I do think this is an opportunity to re-examine everything, re-examine how hard we are on boys, how much we discount girls. Just try hard. We know that girls get messages of, you don't have to do well, just try hard. And we know that if women and girls think about their gender before writing a math test, they do less well than if they just go into it cold. There are stereotypes in society that we can use this, but on the men's side, again, it's Men's Mental Health Month. This making boys grow up too fast. We can take this opportunity to take another look at that. Like, let's let kids be kids when they're boy kids. Let's not try to turn them into little adults starting at 14 or 15 years old. Let's just let them be young people. Adolescence is a development stage for a reason. They're not just not yet adults. They're adolescents. Let them try shit, Don't come down on them like a ton of bricks over everything. Talk to them. And more important, when they talk, listen to them. That part is simple. Listening isn't always easy, but it is simple. If your, white, straight, cisgender, male teenage son tells you something's wrong, please listen to that boy. The problem is we don't. It's toughen up. White, straight, cisgender girls, are upset. Oh, she's just being dramatic. It's just a phase. She doesn't know what she wants. Yeah. We don't listen to any kids. And we know that kind of neglect negatively impacts people's emotional development because we're so driven by avoiding the kid ending up the things we hate and fear. And guess what? Kids are their own people. They're going to do something that's going to shock and disappoint you at some point. They're their own people. And maybe it'll stick, maybe it won't. But guess what? That's part of it, The point is we have to give them enough of a contained environment so they can try stuff on with an off-ramp if it's not working. And there's a lot of fear-mongering with that the minute it's medicalized. But I hate to break it to you, we've medicalized youth mental health for a long time now. Instead of just treating every kid like an individual. Because, I don't want them to be those damn conservatives. I don't want them to be those damn liberals. Ideological gatekeeping, institutional capture. Rawr! Where's the kindness? Where's the that's a human? It's lost by design. And it comes up in the big stuff. And I'll have at least one comment going, that's not what Zionism means. I think I know what Zionism means. We say next year in Jerusalem, every year at the Passover Seder. You got the big. You got the small. Some guy being an anti-Semitic dickhead. Oh, no, it's not that. I just think all non-Christians are going to hell. Nah, you invoked Auschwitz, you schmuck. You went there. Oh, but I don't hate. At some point, ignorance is indistinguishable from hate. And when a person is saying, this sends the message that you hate me, you don't have to agree, but how about fucking listen? Think about, listen to how your words and how your actions are landing. Again, it's the simplest thing in the world. But for a lot of people, it's not easy because there's too much bullshit in the way. And underneath hate is usually fear. And underneath fear is usually shame. And the thing about anger and rage and hate is they burn, right? So they feel powerful. They feel kinetic. They wear you out. They burn you from the inside, but they feel temporarily good. Underneath, fear is cold, right? Shame is cold and dark and damp and miserable, right? We don't like feeling these things. I don't terribly like being angry. Personally, it's fucking exhausting. But yeah, shame just feels helpless. Fear definitely feels helpless. And so a lot of people would rather hang out in rage and anger and hate because that feels powerful than really face what's going on underneath. And you are responsible for what you do. There's no getting around that. And giving away your choices, your mind, your will to any sort of dogma, whether it be political, whether it be religious, whether it be any sort of that does not excuse you from what you do. In fact, if you believe so strongly in what you believe in, you would think you would be the best example of that as you possibly could be. You'd be a light unto the world, as we like to say. And I mean, I know the Mormons got that in their articles of faith, but there's so many people who think they can be shitty, and it's love. They can terrorize someone, and it's support. They can rob people of their freedom of expression through bullying and say they support freedom. They want to free somebody. Free. That kind of hate, people see it. And you can claim chalk is cheese, but the minute somebody tastes it, they're like, what? It just doesn't taste good. It's gotten nonsensical. And anybody who goes, hold on, wait a minute, I'm confused, I'm lost, I need time, they get accused of bigotry. But that's just an authoritarian urge manifesting. And that's not kindness. Every time I say, when I accused that guy of anti-Semitic hate, I knew I was not being nice. I was not being kind. I was fucking done. Like I said, I realized I was starting to hate the guy myself, which means we gotta solve this. Like, either this fucking stops or we go our separate ways, because I will not hate. I will not let that infect me. Because I like helping people. I like doing nice things. I like building towards things. I like actually progressing. I like talking to people and hearing why, maybe the whole gender thing is confusing to them. That's an important conversation to have so people can come to it and people can, feel confident in their views. I'm ready to have that. And again, criticize Netanyahu and those people self-censored all you want. But there are lines. You can't just do whatever you want. You can't inflict any cruelty you want and say, oh no, under it, I just want freedom and kindness and peace. Be honest with yourself before, you hit the point where you're like, I'm going to go set old people on fire, but not until my daughter graduates high school because I'm a great dad. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Cares session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. A lot of people use those to talk these issues out. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching and be well.